and 314 for a shooting at Century Theaters. They're saying somebody's shooting in the auditorium.
Roger, keep your fires west of the smoke. You're cleared hot. An officer hit. Send me the world.
Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again.
Welcome to Tactical Tangents.
Welcome back to Tactical Tangents. This is Mike. This episode is brought to you by Point 6. Point 6 merino wool socks and base layers are built with performance in mind. Merino wool is a great natural fiber that controls moisture, temperature, and friction to keep you comfortable, and I have been wearing their socks every day at work for years now. Their socks are made in the U.S. and have a lifetime guarantee, so go buy the last pair of socks you will ever need at point6.com. Today I want to have a quick conversation about problem solving. I was having a conversation recently with a buddy, and it had to do with mental health and self-defense. And one of the things that we talked about as it relates to post-traumatic stress after a critical incident, and this is one of the themes that came out of the conversation, was how much control you have over the outcome of any given situation, right? Critical incident. Often people struggle with a sense of helplessness in the aftermath of one of these things because they weren't able to positively impact the outcome. They weren't able to change the outcome or fix anything. And that's a challenging feeling for sure. I've been there. But I think that having some sense of self-control and the ability to take personal responsibility of your own efforts and your own performance and your own contributions is something that can be very empowering. But how, right? So one of the things this relates closely to is having a growth mindset. And this is actually something that has been researched pretty well. The technical term for this is implicit learning theories. We've talked about this a time or two on the show, and I know it sounds very academic, but just deal with it for a minute. Essentially, subconsciously, right? This isn't something you necessarily consciously are aware of, but subconsciously, people have their own theory about their capacity or aptitude for a given skill or a given task, right? Some people believe that they have a fixed capacity for growth or skill. That is called a fixed or entity-based theory, that there are things that you're good at and things that you aren't. And therefore, there are things that you should do and things that you should avoid. And then there's an incremental-based theory, which is more of that growth mindset, in which you believe that there may be some limit to your talent or aptitude, but that you can get incrementally closer to that limit over time. And this, again, is a more favorable growth mindset. How you view your own learning style is something that was sort of nurtured into you by your parents when you were young and your coaches and your teachers growing up, but it's not a static thing and it can change over time. And you can apply some conscious effort to change the way that you view that within yourself and develop a more favorable position if you chose to, right? In the self-defense or the quote unquote tactical world, we want to take as much control over the outcome of a situation, of a bad situation, as we can, because these are dynamic and unpredictable and often dangerous situations. So we don't want to leave anything to chance. You've heard us say this before, luck is not a tactic. And this is why the quality of our training matters. It's not just collecting the hours for sport and saying, oh, well, I train this many hours a month, or I've been to this many classes, or I have this many certificates. It's not about that. It's about seeking out the really good training and trying to engineer or manufacture good outcomes in less than perfect circumstances, right? So we want to have as much control over that outcome as possible. And that requires that personal responsibility. And I think a growth mindset goes a long way. So I'm going to talk about some examples. First of all, if you're a parent or a teacher, or in my case, a police trainer, right? A training guy involved in training, you can employ this in your style of teaching or in leading if you're in a leadership role. There's a scenario that I ran for my teammates on SWAT a little while back, and it involved some medical stuff, right? And one of the problems that we have been tackling as a team and learning more about is the use of fire as a weapon. So during the course of this scenario, I gave them a critically injured burn victim. And the baseline for most of the people on our team is mostly dealing with penetrating trauma. Like, we're mostly talking about gunshot wounds typically. And so a lot of their treatment modalities are focused on things like chest seals, tourniquets, pressure bandages, wound packing. But burn injuries was something that was kind of novel to them. And they don't carry much in their toolbox to fix that problem. And several of them were just kind of stuck, and they didn't know what to do. And it's not something they were familiar with. It was a new problem. And one of the key points in the debrief, and this isn't just for medical scenarios, it was in this case, but something in general is, I don't pay you to have all of the answers, right? I pay you to figure it out, to work with what you got, and to come up with a solution and make the situation better. And I don't expect you to know how to fix every problem, but I do expect you to use your skills and your ability as a dynamic thinker and a decision maker to assess a problem, identify alternatives, and work to solve it the best you can. You don't get to just throw your hands up and say, well, I don't know what to do. Because it's up to you to do something. And that feeling of helplessness, of I don't know what to do, is something that you've got to learn how to cope with. And problem solving in general as a skill, as its own skill, is a much more valuable thing than the concrete things that you need to learn about, let's say, treating a burn victim. Sure, I can teach you the march or ABCs of any given problem, but that feeling of helplessness and learning how to work through that and deal with it and come up with a solution is a lot more valuable over time. Because if you have a growth mindset and you don't want to relive that mistake, you're going to take the personal responsibility and say, hey, I didn't do great on that one, but I can get a little bit better. Let me learn what I need to learn, and I can come back stronger the next time that comes up. Now that low level coping is something that will apply to the big major critical incident that you couldn't get the outcome you wanted on. That's one step, right? As a point of contrast, I'll give you another example, another story that's kind of the opposite of that, right? I was asked to mentor a young officer who was struggling with managing stress. And he was generally a good dude, but he'd been in a shooting, and there was a couple other high stress situations that were captured on body camera. And when the command staff looked at this stuff, they were like, you know what? This guy is kind of going up to an 11 when the stress hits, and he needs to go back to the academy and do some remedial training, right? So during the course of this kind of retraining phase, one night they asked me to take him on like a ride along, basically. So he's riding with me, and he's telling me about some of his challenges at the academy. And he's like, I don't understand why I have such a hard time when it comes to this real life stuff. Like, I really like training. I enjoy training. I go out to the range all the time, and I'm a good shooter. I shot a 250 on my last qual. I just don't get it. And so I was talking to this kid, and I was like, hey, so you said you're good at shooting, so why do you go to the range so much? Why not work on something else that you need more work on? Like maybe it's physical fitness, or maybe it's fighting, combative skills, right? Defensive tactics, arresting control tactics. And he didn't really have an answer. The problem with being good at something and only working on the things that you're good at is you're stuck in your comfort zone. And that's not where growth occurs, right? Instead of being a good student and allowing yourself to be vulnerable, you just go out and you reinforce what you already know. Look, see, I'm good at shooting. Yeah, good job. I could do this. I'm great. Well, what is it that they say about when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? Every problem looks like a nail. We have to be better than that in this line of work, right? This is like the oh shit bang. You get in this fight that's not going well, and you go, oh my God. So you pull your gun, right? We've seen shootings like that over the years across the country, and that's what you want to avoid, right? So in this line of work, that's not good enough. So having a growth mindset where you go out and you challenge yourself and you learn from your mistakes, that's crucial to your performance in this line of work. And really in any of these, public safety, EMS, fire, law enforcement, military, these high stress kind of situations, it's about your ability to be adaptable to those things, right? And it's not about your shooting skill or your fighting skill or your PT test scores. It's all about your own ability to learn and grow and perform. So that fixed mindset of I'm a good shooter, so I'm going to go out to the range. I'm going to get better at shooting, even better, because I'm a great shooter. But I'm not going to do these other things because I'm not good at those. Well, that's a problem. That's a really big problem in this line of work. So that gets us into the softer skills. And I mentioned that, this is about problem solving as its own skill. It's one thing to know a March assessment. in your first aid, your medical care. Okay, I know what MARCH stands for. Cool. I know how to shoot a perfect score on my shooting qualification. Perfect. I can shoot. I know the fundamentals. I can shoot this known test, this known entity really, really well. But how you approach problem solving and use those mental models that you know about the fundamentals or whatever, the templates, your past experiences, and applying all that to new and challenging situations, that's better. Okay, I have a burn victim. March is my tool that I've been taught. So let me try to go through this. All right. Massive bleeding. Okay. There's nothing nothing I can see, nothing I could do. Airway. Well, if you start to learn about burn things, you're gonna learn airway is gonna become a big problem along with breathing. You'll learn that hypothermia becomes a problem, but you have a template. You have something to work with. And even if you know nothing about burn victims, you can still work through that. The airway things will reveal themselves over time. Now, there might not be much you could do about it, but you'll notice at some point. The respiration, same thing. Circulation, you're going to figure that out over time. And when it comes to the hypothermia and the mental status stuff, things are unchanged. Keep them warm. It's the same thing, right? So you just have to learn how to work through that stuff. And that is far more important than knowing what the letters stand for or learning everything you need to know about burn victims or whatever. So you just got to figure out how to deal with failure or less than perfect performance and how to deal with problems that you weren't able to solve. And that skill, that's enough. So problem solving being one thing, right? But also how to deal with failure, coping with failure, and sometimes a lowercase f failure. Like, hey, I messed up this scenario training, right? Or I failed a qualification, but I get a remedial. I could shoot it again. It's not the end of the world, right? I made a bad decision and I got in trouble. I got disciplined for it at work. All right. It was a minor thing. Yeah, I got a little slap on the wrist for it, but it happened. Or you're debriefing an incident and things didn't go, they didn't go great. I'm not real satisfied with something I did back there, but you view those failures as opportunities for growth, right? An opportunity to learn. That is the skill that you have to develop. And it's going to help you cope in the aftermath of one of these critical incidents. It's something that you have to develop over time. You don't want to wait until the big one and then try to play catch up and learn after the fact when you're already all messed up, right? You want to learn the little steps, the little coping mechanisms to deal with that so that when the big one happens, you can deal with that okay and be okay, right? That's the goal. And in a perfect world, when you learn along the way, it's going to lead you to good decisions and avoiding bad outcomes. It's going to lead to the good outcomes. You're going to do things well, right? But this is an imperfect world that we live in, and we can't always control the outcome. And so having those skills will prepare you to fight the ghosts that might haunt you down the road. Just like you don't want to rely on chance or luck to win your next gunfight, you don't want to be in a fair fight with post-traumatic stress either. You need to learn the skills that you need to fight and cope and struggle and ultimately overcome and grow. And that is a life skill. That's not just a tactical skill. That is a life skill. Because life will throw all kinds of things your way and you're going to have to deal with it, right? It is not something you should wait and learn after the fact. It takes a lot of work. And this is ultimately how you build resilience and mental toughness. You challenge yourself, you get out of your comfort zone, you learn how to deal with things that don't go your way, right? Get on the jiu-jitsu mat, have the discipline to get your fitness and nutrition under control, be vulnerable, ask questions, see a therapist, whatever it means for you, get out there and do it because you never know what kind of problems life is going to throw your way. So you want to be able to work through it. Okay. I want to leave you with the Man in the Arena quote by Teddy Roosevelt because it's the first thing that comes to mind when I stand tall in front of the group in a debrief or otherwise. And I say, hey, this is what I messed up. And I admit my failures and I try to own it, right? It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best, in the end, knows the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. This is one of my favorite quotes by Teddy Roosevelt. I hope you got something out of this. Learn how to problem solve, learn how to cope. It's going to go a long way. Take care. It's all I got. Good talk.